Peyton Watson. Now, I don't mean to say I told you so, but
told me so.
I am want to say I told you so.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not even just you.
Yeah.
Karan, you can't really fault people for
Thank you.
being disbelievers.
Thank you. I understand.
Sometimes you just have somebody that catches your eye. Sometimes you just find somebody that has the skill set, that has the IQ, has the tangibles, and you're just like, that's interesting. Peyton Watson walked into this league 3 points a game at UCLA.
Yep.
Nobody really wanted him. People
Yep.
said that it was an oversight. They shouldn't have drafted him.
I said that, like, I had him 55th on my draft board that year.
Right.
It was a bad choice.
I remember in Summer League, his rookie year, I literally said, after watching him for 3 games, that I think this could be the best defender the Denver Nuggets have had since Marcus Camby.
It's crazy. It was a crazy take then, and it's still crazy.
It's still
now.
kind of crazy now.
Still crazy now. But I mean, hey, look, you deserve a pat on the back, man.
But here's the thing. I just think that let me ask you this. So Peyton Watson has continued to grow in his value. Like, he started the year off. He was like, maybe he plays behind Justin Holiday, all this other stuff. That's, I think, a lot of the consensus was. Peyton has arguably become the 6th best and most important player of the Nuggets.
I think he is that right now. I think Reggie Jackson's been going through a little bit of a lull here for Denver, but in his place, Peyton Watson, and frankly in Christian Brown's place too, because I think we all thought that Christian Brown would be that 6th man in a lot of ways. But what Peyton Watson has done as a dynamic, versatile athlete who can fill a lot of different roles, wear a lot of different hats, and do everything that the Nuggets ask of him defensively, it is such a big deal.
Right.
And Denver's they're a veteran team. I just talked about this on Pickaxe. They are a veteran team that can handle different little variations here or there and maximize what a guy like that can do. And Peyton Watson has so much to give on the defensive end, especially, that there's so many ways that Denver can deploy him and be successful. And he's really, really made them look good for it.
And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that even last year, go back to last year, that little 5-game stint he had.
Yeah.
We saw him go head-to-head with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker.
Yep.
He was like, okay.
Pretty interesting.
Looks pretty good. We saw him versus the Rockets. He's like, okay. Like, he's moving, running in transition, playmaking a little bit.
Open court guy.
Right. I was like, all right, this dude looks pretty good. We saw him versus the Jazz.
Yeah.
And Ochai, or whether it was Chris Dunn or whoever else it was.
Locking down Chris Dunn.
Yeah, I was like, all right.
Yeah.
We saw him versus De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
Blocked him.
Yep.
We saw him versus Steph Curry. 3
Blocked him.
blocks in that game.
Crazy blocks, too.
So then we're like, all right, so it's a very small sample size, but it looks like he might become something maybe a couple years from now.
Yeah, I didn't want to put anything on that right now because, like, still so young, and Denver's got their vision right now. Like, how could you possibly expect a guy like that to be good so early?
And then literally starts this year off, and we get a chance to see him versus Kawhi Leonard, versus Paul George, versus Kevin Durant. We're getting to see him versus Devin Booker. We're seeing him versus Steph Curry again. We saw him versus Fox this year again.
Yep.
We saw him versus SGA in OKC to start the year off and blocked him at the rim.
That was a big one. That was a big game.
And then Ryan Blackburn, a.k.a. Ryan Chartburn, as known as Jamal Murray and Michael Malone. Here's the thing. We got to see him versus Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard in the same game. They would literally run a pick and roll to get Peyton Watson in space versus Dame, and he would switch easily. Force Dame into a turnover.
That's what he does.
Giannis, and Peyton Watson's only, 6'8". He's like 200 and, he said he's 208 pounds, 210 pounds, 18, whatever.
He's probably 200.
Right. He's not super big right now.
Yeah.
He gets Giannis in the post on multiple possessions. Stop. Forces Giannis to drive, doesn't have a lane, kicks the ball out for some crazy pass.
Yeah.
I think he held Giannis as the primary scorer last night to 2 of 5.
I saw those numbers. He was 1 of 2 versus Dame was 1 of 2 against him, and Peyton Watson held Giannis Antetokounmpo to 2 of 5. Had a turnover, no assists. It was really, really impressive, man. Like, that's exactly what you want a young guy to do: to compete, play hard, do different things on the defensive end, and to be successful against 2 vastly different stars in that setup is just so impressive.
But listen to this, and again, primary tracking data with synergy is a little difficult.
A little wonky.
Right.
Yeah.
But these are still the numbers. Versus DeMar DeRozan, he was 4 of 9 versus Peyton Watson this year.
Yeah.
Versus Kevin Durant, he's 1 of 9 versus Peyton Watson this year. Versus Shai Gilgeous, he's 4 of 9 versus Peyton Watson this year. Zion Williamson, 2 of 9.
That's a crazy
versus Peyton Watson this season. Paul George, 1 of 6 versus Peyton Watson this season. Kawhi Leonard, 1 of 5 versus Peyton Watson this season. Now, again, I think for me, it's not about individual data. It's about if you put enough names together and a collection of information over a long enough period of time, you start to get some normalities. My normality for Peyton Watson is that he is, at some point in time in the next couple of years, going to be a first-team all-defense player.
It's crazy. Like, I can't automatically rule it out, and I'm gonna put some cold water on it right now because like he's amazing. He's got to start. In order to do something like that, he's got to be a starter. He's got to play. He's got to play a bunch of minutes. And there's a possibility that he does. Like, we don't know what it's going to look like for Denver over the course of these next couple of years. I was just looking at like luxury tax information today. It's going to get really expensive for some of these teams. And like Denver, it's one of them. And they've got Peyton under contract for a couple more years here. That could be really, really interesting to see whether they transition into him becoming a focal point of their team, becoming a focal point of their defense. You wanted to have the conversation about Peyton Watson's ceiling.
Yeah.
And like, but should we do that or should we do comps?
Let's do his comp.
Okay.
And then let's do ceilings. And because I think we can build our archetype off of that.
Who would be your comp for Peyton Watson? Do you have one?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I was talking to Adam Mattes yesterday, the NVR content director of content, great dude.
Sure.
He actually brought up Andre Iguodala, which I loved.
It's a good one.
I thought that was really good. 2012, 2013, Iggy, great player. Like ended up going to, the Warriors next year. There's a whole situation. All right. Don't fuss at this. I know it was an ugly situation. But for me, I actually look at Paul George.
Interesting.
I don't think he has
crazy.
the bag that Paul had early on, but Peyton, when you look at him, he was the number one player out of California.
Yeah.
He was a 5-star. And then he goes to UCLA, doesn't play because they play older veteran players.
Jaime Jaquez Jr.
Right. And then he ends up going to the league. Everybody's like, why would they spend? I think for me, if he gets a long enough leash, he's been shooting pull-up mid-range shots.
Yeah.
He's shooting three-pointers as a spot-up shooter. He's getting to the basket. And when he gets in transition, it's at the point now when he gets in transition, I'm like, he's more than likely going to finish or get fouled. And that's such an important component for me. Like, can you drive and create contact and get to the line? And can you be a decent spot-up shooter? And can you have enough ball handle where you can create space for yourself? And Peyton's showing that more and more. So for me, it doesn't mean that he's going to be Paul George. But for me, his archetype feels like Paul George.
It's interesting. I think there's a lot more ball handling with a guy like Paul George than what we're ultimately going to get with Peyton. Like there's like he can handle the ball in open court. Right. There's no doubt about that. But what makes Paul George so special is the ability to navigate and pick and roll, the step back threes and doing all those things as a pick and roll creator and whatnot. Like that's a layer to Peyton's game that we just haven't seen quite yet. And maybe we will. Maybe we will see something like that. I tend to be a little bit more conservative on this and go like a Herb Jones or an Andre Kirilenko, somebody like that.
Andre Kirilenko is conservative.
It is a little conservative, but just in terms of like the style, because like Andre Kirilenko was he was a one-time All-Star for the Utah Jazz, dynamic player, elite starter for their team. But like I think he fits that role as like a connector, somebody who's a good passer, a good rebounder, a good shot, like a great shot blocker and defender, and somebody who's like a Swiss Army knife for your team, but not necessarily like that high-level 20-point per game star, that kind of guy like that.
Do you think he could have the potential to be a 20-point per game scorer?
I don't know, because like so much of this is about shooting talent, and I'm not sure if Peyton Watson has the shooting talent necessary to get to that threshold. And especially like on a team like Denver where they share the ball so much, I see him more like if he does end up in a starting lineup, I see him more replicating somebody like an Aaron Gordon or a KCP as opposed to a Michael Porter or a Jamal Murray in terms of the point totals.
The problem is he's more, I think, dynamic than either one of those players are right now early in their career. I think
maybe.
So here's the thing. So I was thinking about SGA because I remember there were a long time I wanted SGA bad because he was a great ball defender at the time, not necessarily like a high volume scorer or whatever. I was like, but you know what? Like he would be great next to like Jamal Murray or something like that, which he would, by the way.
I mean, sure.
But SGA averaged 10.8 his rookie year with the Clippers. Very next year, 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 3.3 assists. Literally like took this springboard leap up to next year, and then 23.7, 24.5, and then 31.4 and 31.3.
But a lot of that has to come with opportunity, right? Like, and so if Peyton is going to be a 6th man, or if he's going to be a 7th man or somebody like that within Denver starting lineup, let's say Denver, I don't know, let's say they win a championship again. do you want to break up that starting lineup that wins a championship? I'm not sure I would if I'm Denver. I'd try to bring back KCP. I'd try to play Aaron Gordon, and like maybe you can work in Peyton Watson a little bit more, but you don't necessarily want to like move like everything in order to have Peyton Watson reach his potential, you know?
Yeah, so it's obviously going to be a process for Denver, and I'm curious to see how, as he continues to get more like dynamic in his skill set, as he gets more opportunity, how far does he grow? Like, where does he go? I mean, time will tell, but man, I'm really excited for what I've seen from him, and I truly believe, man, that he's on a rookie contract for this year and next 2 years. And then, depending on his value, I told you I think he can be a $25 million a year player, if not more by then. But I just think that Peyton Watson has everything in the skill, like in terms of in his bag, to round out as a very good to, I'll say, positive offensive player and be one of the best defenders in the league. And that's like a very valuable player to have.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that he can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about whether he will, because there's a lot that other teams are going to start to game plan for him a little bit more. Like he's not at the front of their scouting reports or anything like that. That's something that Christian Brown specifically this year has had to deal with because teams understand his game a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's how Peyton Watson responds to that, how he continues to grow beyond that. Can he become a better shooter? Can he become a more dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands in the half court? Because there's some levels that he's got to reach that he hasn't shown.
Right. The day that he shows a little bit of step back,
tween,
creates a little space, headsy tween, behind the back, the Joker for the lay.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a wrap.
It'll be so much fun. And like, I want to root for that too,
right.
because like that makes it more fun. And he's such a fun, charismatic player to root for too.
Mm-hmm.
So like you want guys like that to succeed within your organization because he would be so much fun to watch over the course of the rest of his career.
Right. Well, y'all, that's going to do it for Mile High Sports. We're talking about Peyton Watson. What are your thoughts? How good do you think Peyton Watson can be? What is his ceiling? Do you have a player comp for him? Are you here with Ryan Chartburn, Andre Kirilenko or something? Or are you more on my side with the Paul George? Let me know in the comment section, y'all. Make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. Mile High Sports, we going up. See y'all soon.